Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Die letzten Nachzügler sind eingetroffen. Die Glocken hören in 2, 3, 5 Sekunden auf zu läuten. Das heißt, es ist Zeit zu beginnen. Kurz in eigener Sache. Ich vertrete hier heute Abend die kluge und charmante Andrea Wallrath, die verhindert ist, weil sie krank ist. Und das ist eine Aufgabe, an der ich eigentlich nur scheitern kann, aber ich werde mein Bestes geben. Weiterhin werde ich auf Deutsch sprechen. Der Vortrag wird auf Englisch sein. Die Diskussion werden wir bestreiten in Deutsch und in Englisch. Das heißt, Sie können, wenn Sie mögen, auf Englisch fragen oder eben auf Deutsch Fragen stellen, Beiträge leisten. Und Leo van Broeck wird dann auf Englisch antworten, weil ihm das angenehmer ist. Und geachtet dessen versteht er sehr gut Deutsch und kann quasi bilingual reagieren auf Ihre Fragestellungen. So, das Missverständnis des Jahrhunderts werden wir heute Abend erörtern. Und das sowohl, denke ich, im Detail, wie eben auch mit einer sehr globalen Sicht auf die Fragen, die uns beschäftigen werden. Und kurz zu der Vita von Leo van Broeck. Er lebt in Brüssel, ist Ingenieurarchitekt und hat Philosophie studiert. Also schon in dem Werdegang oder dem Bildungsgang zeichnet sich so eine Interesse an Crossover-Fragestellungen ab. Er war für 25 Jahre Gastprofessor für Architektur und Städtebau an der Fakultät für Architektur und Bauingenieurwesen der Universität in Leuven. Dann 2007-22 Gründungspartner Architekturbüro Bogdan van Broeck. Ich hoffe, dass ich die richtig spreche, den Bogdan. Und von 2016 bis 2020 war er, und er wird Ihnen vielleicht begegnet sein in dieser Rolle, als flämischer Regierungsarchitekt der Vlaamse Bouwmeester. Eine wichtige Rolle, kommen wir gleich noch drauf, nehme ich an. Er gründete die Stiftung Stadt und Architektur in Leuven und war an der Gründung des Flämischen Architekturinstitutes beteiligt. Also eigentlich immer so in der Rolle der Vermittlung, des Streitens für Architektur und der beschäftigt mit der Frage, wie kann man Prozesse so organisieren, dass was Gutes rauskommt, diese Prozesse eben im Sinne der Architektur halt, also Architekturprozesse. Heute beschäftigt er sich mit den menschlichen Ursachen für den Zusammenbruch des planetarischen Ökosystems und den Auswirkungen der Zerstörung dieses Ökosystems auf die biologische Vielfalt durch unsere Wirtschaft, unsere Flächennutzung und die Art und Weise, wie wir unsere räumliche Präsenz auf der Erde gestalten. Also ein großer kosmischer Blick. Er ist heute Präsident des Klimaexpertenausschusses von Brüssel, Vorstandsmitglied der Sonian Forest Foundation. Sonienwald ist eine wichtige Grünfläche in der Region Brüssel, Mitglied im Club of Rome und seit 2023, last but not least, im Kölner Gestaltungsbeirat. Also es gibt viele Gründe, ihn eingeladen zu haben. Vortrag in englischer Sprache, habe ich schon gesagt, danach Diskussion bilingual. Ich freue mich sehr auf Ihren Vortrag.
Guten Abend, vielen Dank für dieses schöne Intro. Mein Deutsch ist so ein bisschen so. Das genügt nicht für die technischen Worte, so ich mache jetzt auf Englisch, aber ich verstehe es. Das geht, so no stress. Okay. The misunderstanding of the century. What is he going to talk about? Well, we are all used, if somebody asked a person in the street, what is the biggest ecological disaster we are facing? They are probably saying climate change. And I think this is the misunderstanding of the century. I'm not saying that climate change is not true, it's a big problem, but it's not the biggest one. And there is a lot more going on than climate change. And that's why, I hope this pointer works. Yeah, can you see it or is it too small? So, you are familiar with the concept of planetary boundaries? It's a Stockholm Resilience Center University who makes this diagram every half decade. They update because in the beginning some data were simply missing. And what you see in 2009 is that there are 3 boundaries. I mean, within the green circle, it's okay. We are not in tipping points. We are not threatening the future. And you see that climate change was beginning. Phosphor in agriculture, they had no data yet, but nitrate in fertilizer of agriculture and industrial emissions were known already. But the biggest one was loss of life, wildlife, biodiversity loss. How could they start like Al Gore's? That's when they started to talk about climate change. I mean, the oceans were full of plastic. This is not a consequence of emissions. We took out 85% of all the fish of the oceans. If you drive on the highway 20 years ago, you had like big mashed potatoes of insects on your glass. Today, not. It's nothing to do with climate change. Climate change is only beginning. So I was already in panic for 25 years now that we are missing the point. It is a complete ecological disaster. And if you see in 2015, 4 boundaries were crossed. Land system change, which was here not measured yet, because those are dying because we are using their space. It's very simple. And it's very connected to our profession because we design space. Land use changes, whether it be regional planning, urbanism, or architecture, or interior design, it's all this 3-dimensional presence of mankind on the skin of the planet, as it was said in the introduction. So we are not innocent, and we could become from the most guilty profession, because it's capitalism that decides, not us, but we collaborate. We could become the last defense line if we are insubordinate and we refuse to eat nature. And if you see, and this chart is still warm, it's only a few weeks old. This is 2023. 6 boundaries crossed. We had no idea about novel entities. This is like PFAS, microplastics, all the dirt we throw into natural systems. Climate change is finally getting somewhere. Biosphere integrity is getting worse. We have fresh water coming in because only 3% of the water of the planet is sweet water, drinkable water. That amount is not going to go up. It's very expensive, costs a lot of energy to desalinate seawater, so more and more rivers are not reaching the sea anymore. The Colorado River is dry, like 300-400 kilometers from the coast, because it's used for electricity and irrigation of agriculture. We are squeezing the planet like a lemon. And you cannot say that this is only emissions because we are innocent of all the rest. This is the big problem. That's why I call this really, and if we don't care, because you have the people who don't care about climate, but the ones who care about climate are the good ones, so to speak. And they miss the point also. So I am extremely pessimistic. And you will see that. That's why I'm happy that we are on the ground floor. If you want to jump out of the window, you're safe. But only the pessimist will reach the other side of the desert because he takes 2 extra water bottles in his bag. So I believe in pessimism as a doctor. A doctor that is optimistic will miss the diagnosis. You have to know how bad the disease is or your cure will be too weak. We are not used anymore to be direct. It's a disadvantage of woke, I think, that we don't say what the truth is, because we might hurt people. We have to hurt a lot of people. We have to hurt ourselves. The slides will stay here. That's why I put in active links that you can click. The BDA can distribute this file. The 2 links to those 2 websites are here. Those texts are already 4 or 5 years old, but they are so sharp. They have the politeness of a razor blade, of a knife. They are very direct, but very balanced. I mean, they're both worried about climate. The left guy, Richard Heinberg, says, climate change is a big problem, but not the biggest ecological problem we have. Technology will be very necessary, but will not be enough. It's economy, it's land use, it's demography, it's amount of people, it's everything. So don't think that you can solve it with only one vector of change. It's a very important text. It's only 2-3 pages. The other one is also not so long and is even more radical. It says, look, climate change became irrelevant because the rest is a lot worse. We are anyway 40 years too late. Economic growth is a myth, and every election the politicians start to talk about it again as a kind of idiots. I mean, I am a member of the Club of Rome now. The Limits to Growth was written in 1970. That's more than 50 years ago that they said economical growth, demographical growth. I mean, spaceship Earth has a surface that is not infinite. We are stupid. So the right name is ecosystem collapse. And climate change is one of those elements. Why? Well, it's very simple. In fact, Earth is a system. It's a bit like a coat with 3 layers, like a Gore-Tex. Although there are microplastics in Gore-Tex, but I don't want to open that discussion today. You have water, land, and air. And the 3 layers are totally kaput. That's not for me. For the photo. We took out a lot of fish from the sea, 85% of the mass of fish. I mean, if you want to measure biodiversity loss, they do it in carbon weight. They call it also biomass. So because some inflated fish are full of water, and organic chemistry of life forms is carbon related. So the carbon weight is a very good measure to have the bio impact and the weight, also the mathematical weight in the equation of all the species. So 80 to 85% of the biomass is out of the oceans, mainly the larger fish like tuna, predator fish, and so on. There is acidification of the ocean water because water in contact with carbon dioxide, the pH is getting lower. And everybody with a coffee machine full of calcium knows that you have to use acids to decalcify your coffee machine. This is why calcium structures of coral reefs are destroying because of the acidification of the ocean water. But also plankton are very small creatures with a calcium structure. And many people don't know this, but of all the oxygen in the atmosphere, only 25% is produced by forests and 75% is produced by phytoplankton in the oceans. So we are killing our own oxygen machine. But the worst numbers are on the right. And it didn't start with carbon emissions in the 19th century, 150, 200 years ago. It started 10,000 years ago here. When we became sedentary, when we started to build, when our profession was started, when we started also to possess land for agriculture. And then you see that there was 15 million tons of biomass of mammal vertebrates on the planet, and today only 3 million tons. 85% decline in terrestrial mammal biomass since the rise of humans. Today, the biomass of people on the planet is 35% people, 63% cattle, porks and cows, and only 2% mammals in the wild. That's not climate change. Since 10,000 years, there is not one example, not one single example in our history of a sedentary human presence that did not kill all the vertebrates within its radius of influence after 2-3 decades. Except for those that we domesticated to eat them, chickens and pigs, or to make them totally psychotic and frustrated as the grandson of a wolf that has to sleep next to the fireplace and pretend that he's a dog. And today, ministers or aldermen or people from states or countries or provinces that are the minister responsible for the well-being of animals, in all the countries, it's only animals that we lock up or that we kill and eat. As if there are no other animals anymore. And it's true, there are almost no other animals anymore. So this is this misunderstanding of the century that we keep on thinking that by becoming carbon neutral that we will get anywhere. We are on the Titanic, we are speeding towards the iceberg, and putting an electric engine in the Titanic will not make a difference. Crashing, killing nature in a carbon neutral way, we are killing our mother without heating her up first. It's quite perverse what we are doing, and we think that it will make a difference. Almost nothing. It's a lot worse with lions. We had 2.5 million lions, maybe 3 million, we don't know exactly, 3,000 years ago. We had 1.2 million in the beginning of the 19th century, and today we have a bit less than 20,000, which is already inbreeding. The genetic pool of lions, the differentiation, the Darwinistic differentiation, survival of the fittest. If they all have the same genes and there is a pandemic and they have the same sensitivity, they all die. That's why now there are breeding programs that after 2 generations, the lions have to move from one natural reserve to another to be exchanged, or otherwise they will all get the same twisted chin as the Habsburgs. I mean, it's not about saving the last couple. The planet is not the Arch of Noah. Diversity is also numbers. It's not 2 of each species and we will get out of trouble. No, not at all. Many species are still there, but are virtually dead. What's the main cause? Well, all the impacts that we have are here listed. Changes in land use, species overexploitation, invasive species, pollution, and climate change. And this in the different continents, what part of biodiversity loss is caused by one of the, and each time you see that land use is more or less half. And the second one is overexploitation, like overfishing of life in the ocean. Then you have already around 70–75% of biodiversity loss. So land use is part of, most land use is agriculture and industry, mainly agriculture. Almost half of the country, in many countries, 40% more, 40–50%. And the fact that we don't understand is the first Tesla factory in Europe is built in Germany, and Elon Musk won a lawsuit because he wanted to build it in the middle of nowhere, and he was able to cut down almost 100 hectares of forest. Cuckoo, how crazy can you be? A rhinoceros doesn't need a Tesla. We have Stau in every country. Traffic jam is the German word Stau? Making a traffic jam electric is not such a big difference. So we have not understood the problem. It's really scary. Why is it so important? It's also the repair time. I explain it here. Climate change, carbon is in fact easy. Every year there is a bit more that left. What forests take up and what we inject in the atmosphere, the balance is net. There is a bit more that leaves behind. So it's a cumulative pollutant. So the blanket around the planet is getting thicker, and it is a greenhouse effect. So when we become carbon neutral, it will take 200–300 years before that carbon is out of the atmosphere and it will start to cool down. And it will take a bit more than 1,000 years before we reach the normal temperatures of the good old days of 10–20 years ago, which is fast. In the perspective of eternity of the existence of the planet and mankind, a few 100,000 years that we are here already, this is very fast. If you lose like all the lions and all the rhinoceros and you are in panic and you start to make a lot of new rewilded nature all over the planet and you wait for new mutations, for new species and Darwinistic selection, that you get a new species with the same role in the food chain to replace the rhinoceros, it will not look like a rhino, but that the lack of species is again compensated. Waiting times are between 25,000 and 30,000 years. So biodiversity loss, that damage reparation time is a lot longer. But we also see in lower, some idiots are throwing photovoltaic panels in green fields, in the grass, or on the water. The first 6 meters underwater is full of plants, needs solar light and needs oxygen. Floating photovoltaics, greenfield photovoltaics are not good. There is one exception. Some plants in agricultural applications don't stand full-time exposure to sunlight in the summer. And if you spread your panels with those plants that you want to harvest in between, you have a mix, and it's called agrophotovoltaics. The plants grow better because they are only exposed like half of the time to sunlight. They are less dry, you have to irrigate less, and so on. That's the only exception, because 99% of your PV panels should be on buildings. Small example of Flanders, because the planet is 2% is wildlife and 98% is we and our cattle. In Flanders, we and our cattle are 99.9%. Wild vertebrate biomass is only 1,000, 0.1%. I mean, this is decadent. I come from a war zone if you talk about ecology. And if you see what the market is doing with agriculture, because that number is Flanders, it's Belgium, but it's not so different. Although we are a bit under half of the surface of the country, it's here, 46% there in Flanders. And in Belgium, we see here the value of the produced goods in agricultural sector as a fraction of the GDP, the gross domestic product. It's less than 0.5%. Which sector can claim almost half of a country and produce less than 0.5% of the total economical product? It's not the fault of the agricultural sector. It's the fault of the market. In 100 years' time, every 10 years, we needed to feed more people. Historical agriculture was not so yielding, not so many kilos per hectare. So we had technology, selection of species of plants, crossbreeding of plants, insecticides, pesticides, fertilizer techniques, genetical manipulation. Every decade there were new expensive techniques that doubled almost every decade the production and lowered the cost. And instead of saying, well, we don't lower the cost or a bit, but we mainly are going to give back some land to nature, it were the big, large farms that, no, we will buy those patents of that agrotechnology, and we will produce twice as much food per hectare and sell it for a bit more than half the price. So we win a bit more per kilograms, but we can kick the small farmers out of the market. And then the global stock market starts to deal in fruit and in veggies. And if in a digital market, the apples in New Zealand during 10 minutes are 2 per kilogram cheaper than the ones in Germany or Belgium, the carbon tax on that transport is almost nothing, then our local farmers are dying together with their rotten fruit, and we go and buy stuff in Kenya, New Zealand, Australia, and so on. This is decadent. 40% of our farmers are living below the poverty line because it's the distribution sector and 5, 6, 7 traders who ream of profit margins. Milk in Belgium today, the farmers are getting less than the production cost. They prefer to throw the milk in the toilet or in the sewage because they have to sell it under they make loss with milk. And they sell it for like 1/10 of the supermarket price. So the direct link is completely broken because the stock market is creating poverty and profit for a smaller and smaller amount of people. And that is something that is really very important. I mean, however, design and creativity in our profession are still important today, as they always were, they are not good or bad by themselves. It depends in what ethical frame, in what goals, in what awareness, what market model we are working in apply that creativity. Creativity, an architectural capacity to act in society is like a kitchen knife. You can kill somebody with it or you can make delicious food, and that is depending on your intentions and not on the knife. When I gave this lecture like 20, 30 years ago, I think the 50 or 60 richest people on the planet had the same richness and wealth as the poor half of the population of the planet, which was then 6 billion times half of it was 3 billion people. Today we are 8.1 billion, and today the 8 richest people, only 8 guys, men mostly, have the same wealth than 4.05 billion poor people on the planet. This is perverse and decadent and rotten. And those guys are so powerful today. We see that in Israel. The Israeli banks, Israeli money, spend it also in election campaigns because America is not a democracy anymore. In Europe, election campaigns cannot be funded endlessly by private money because you get a dictatorship of money. If you do that, you lose democracy. And that's why the US cannot act today, because Israel owns their banks. It's very simple. And this was announced in 1879 by Henry George. And then it was a heritage from the feudal times when peasants were working on land which was owned by the noble people who were living in their castle. That was quickly copied in the standard economy. Shareholders, he said, as long as the profit of the shareholder or the landowner is a lot bigger than the salary that the workers are getting, whatever progress you have and whatever little trickle down you have to the poor will be emancipated, but a lot slower. The rise of the shareholder goes faster than the rise of the salaries, always. So your inequality in your society is increasing. He announced it. He said, you will have an increasing poverty. Progress causes poverty if your capitalism is not accessible for everybody. So it's not, communism is worse. That's really not a solution because it's concentrating shareholders to the government is just as bad as to Elon Musk and George Bezos. By the way, I was already suspecting George Bezos flew to space with the profit of Amazon. I heard he was like a bit over 100 kilometers high. And I took a calculator, and if you make the Earth as a polystyrene ball of 2 meters, then Bezos was 14 millimeters high. That's not the universe, that's a razor blade on your chin. He has been weightless for 10 minutes. But saying that you are an astronaut who has been in the universe, space traveler, again, nuts. So, I'm not religious. I was educated Catholic, but thanks to the Jesuits, I lost my religion when I was 20 years old. A bit earlier even. But here you see Adam and Eve who got the assignment like, be prosperous, multiply, make children, and conquer the planet. They finished the job and they talked to each other, Adam, and he said, okay, what now? What's the next step? Because it's all broken and rotten and burned, and it's a garbage dump. The planet is killed, so what's the next task? And if there is a journal on TV about an economical crisis, we need, the growth of the economy is going down, we need to increase our consumption, and the living room is full of useless junk. This is sick. And nobody talks about it. So I can laugh a bit with our profession. We eat trees and we shit concrete, so to speak. But it's mankind, it's not only architects. We are not the boss, we can't control what we have to do often. We can refuse, yes, this is possible. But if the planet would go to Dr. Sun for an exam, and the Sun would say, I'm afraid that you have a disease, you have humans, like cockroaches or lice or virus or COVID. The planet has humans. We are the invasive species. So, and that's our biggest problem. How we have to get cured from ourselves. The virus has to hopefully not kill itself, but at least mutate into something that is not so destructive anymore. And we think it will be done with Teslas and heat pumps and technology, but we don't have to change. No, it's the opposite. The technology will be marginally necessary. If we don't change, the technology will even be useless. So I cannot repeat this enough, and it doesn't stick to people. I told it to journalists. 2 years later, they talk again carbon reduction and growth, and I don't. And I think it's the cause of cognitive dissonance is that it's very difficult for a species to question itself. We don't want to hear that. At this side, we are deaf, and the other side, we don't hear that well. And that is the content of the sentence. And there is more bad news. Overshoot Day. The one of the planet is here, 2nd of August. That's the date when all mankind, the average footprint of 8.1 billion people, have used up everything the planet can stand and deliver. All the damages that the nature can absorb, and all the goods that it can produce for the wildlife and for us are gone. We are stealing money from future generations of people and wildlife. We are killing wildlife, and we are killing also our children and grandchildren. But it gets more interesting if you look at the overshoot date of each country. It's an interesting definition. Belgium is number 5 here, or number 6, number 5. March 23, Germany is May 4th. This March is 1 quarter of a year. So that means the overshoot date of a country is, what if all the 8.1 billion people on the planet live with the average footprint of the citizens of that country? That's the overshoot date of that country. So if everybody on the planet would live like people in Belgium, we would need 1 quarter of the year, so we need 4 planets, or 2 billion people. If 2 billion people live like Belgians, there is no overshoot of the planet. So, but then there are 6 billion people too many, if the Belgian footprint would be everybody's footprint. Now the bad news is coming. More and more countries are in that list, even ones where we already say Iraq, no, this is not the standard. I mean, if 8.1 billion people live like in Iraq, you don't have good hospitals, you don't have independent schools for women, you don't have healthcare, women's rights are nowhere, everything is dust shot to pieces by war. This is not a standard that you can sell to everybody as this is your desirable ecological future. Because I see many left-wing engaged people who worry about ecology saying that demography is not an issue. It is. And also that is a byproduct of capitalism. There are a few countries that have no overshoot day yet, but this is even worse than you are really in hell. You are in Burkina Faso, in Bangladesh, in Niger, in Congo, you have civil wars. You have in Congo, I saw after the war 10, 12 years ago, I was there with my son. I wanted him to see something else than the Costa Brava. In the jungle, I saw villages where girls of 19 years old were pregnant of baby number 4. At the age of 19, the mom has already 3 kids working with daddy and mom on the field, and with a belly like this, she's waiting for number 4, cutting with a very primitive tool in sand that is hard like concrete. And the Chinese then were building roads, and they were bringing their own labor that they don't have to employ locals. They don't leave 1 penny behind in Africa, the Chinese. We also didn't. When we were in the colonial era, Europe has colonized a lot of the third world. So that belt of India, Bangladesh, and Central Africa is even worse than the countries with the lowest footprint, and they will need to raise their footprint if they want women's rights and schools and hospitals and so. So what is then the ecological footprint that is possible if we become carbon neutral? A circular economy, no waste, no emissions. A steady state, only qualitative growth, no quantitative growth anymore, not more products, better products, but less impact on land, less impact on resources. A totally inclusive society, no poor salaries, jobs, no poor salary, no low-income countries anymore. Then maybe, at best, we are around 3 billion people, because we have to leave half of the planet back to nature. It's a lot. We have to eat a lot less meat, because meat, 2/3 of that agricultural land that we saw a few slides ago, is only making food for cattle. Per kilocalorie of nutritional value, red meat needs 5 times more land and 20 times more water than plant-based food. I love steak. My grandfather was a shop with game and deer and pheasant and boar and rabbits and stuff. We ate delicacies in my youth. I reduce a lot. And I try to buy good stuff from locals and not this junk from big industry. So it's getting worse, because today the discourse that demography is not an issue is coming from the right wing. From Putin needs soldiers, Erdogan, Orban, Bolsonaro, the Republicans in the United States, they are against abortion because otherwise in the schools they don't have enough children to shoot at. Because again, every life counts before it's born. After they are born, we want free use of weapons. I mean, that country is becoming a totally lunatic theocracy, I think. Here we see the luck that the pill was invented in the 60s. This point here, the invention of the pill. Our natality index goes down. Otherwise, that would have been a real disaster. We will go down in, it's also a new chart, it's only a few months old. We will go down already by 2080, I think. Then it will become negative. This point when the natality rate it becomes negative, this curve is changing, is reaching the peak. But that's, I mean, this is already, we have to get here somewhere. And if we are not, okay, every overpopulated ecosystem will get more pandemics, will get more conflicts, so we will die also from other stuff than intelligent demographical reduction, because the main vectors that we need are three. Schools, healthcare systems, means no poverty, and women's rights. Because also in rich Arab fundamentalist countries like Saudi Arabia and Malaysia that are not so poor, women are still under the suppression of patriarchal systems, and they are still considered to be reproduction machines. I spoke at the World United Nations Urban Forum in Kuala Lumpur, and I announced that I was going to talk about demography and natality numbers. And the United Nations asked me not to do it. They said, look, this is a Muslim country, you will stir a war. They will lynch you. I shut up, and I still did it when I gave the keynote speech. And to their and my surprise, at the exit, 8 local administrative women, highly trained people active in administration already, with their chador and their veil, but open, with tears in their eyes, came to thank me. They said, thank you. You are the first keynote speaker who comes up for women in Malaysia. Thank you very much. And the UN said, okay, we were wrong. We shouldn't have forbidden you. It is not so sensitive anymore because the women are already in the administration. There is a beginning of emancipation. Maybe it's the moment to start to help them also. I suggested also a few slides ago that capitalism is involved in this problem. And you saw maybe in a few slides already that I use our world in data a lot. This is the biggest reliable database on the planet because it is peer-reviewed by Oxford and Cambridge in the United Kingdom and by the Ivy League universities like MIT and Boston, Massachusetts, and all the big universities in the United States. So you have, like every few months, a chart gets a new date, new numbers. You can, some of the charts, you can tear this slider from there from 1950 to 2015. And then you see all these balls move in real time. It's really active charts, really interesting infographics also. But what you see is on the x-axis, horizontal, you have the child mortality rate. And of course, 65 years of science, we have less child mortality all over the world, but still it's very high. And that's not a coincidence. These are the countries that have no overshoot date. It's this belt of Central Africa and India. Again. And those are the ones with, this is the annual birth rate. So birth rates go down, some are negative, luckily. Japan is the fastest one going down. There are 127 million people. There will be 84 million people by 2025. 2080, sorry. We are 24, no, not in 1 year. In 2080, 2085, there will be a bit over 80 million. Without law, without rules, just spontaneous. They have good healthcare, good women's rights. They have a quite inclusive society. So you see here that the poor countries are the only ones. So demography is not the fault or the mistake of the poor countries. In Congo, where I saw that happening, there was no pill, there was no aspirin. The hospital of the village was a hut in sticks with banana leaves. My son was playing and they said, take care because if you break your leg here, we are not going to drive you to Kinshasa, we are going to drive you to the airport because there is no good hospital in Congo. We will give you morphine and fly you back to Belgium because there you might get your broken leg repaired without getting another disease. So overshoot is an interesting vector as a doctor, right? If we want to be the doctors of the future. So it's the average impact times the number of people. planetary boundary trend. I'm not going to read this. You will get the slides. This is the whole caboodle. I want to say one thing that's important for us today. Reduction of land use and giving half of the planet back. This is because Greenland and the Sahara are almost empty. That is almost 100%. A few villages for Eskimos. The rest is already ice bears and whatever. So in the densely populated areas of the planet, it should be 25 to 30%, which is the biodiversity target of the European Union, is 30% protected land surface. Although the economist said 2/3 of that protected can be nature-inclusive agriculture. So they start to nibble away again. The market is already weakening the measures again. What can we do? So I stop complaining now. I stop the pessimistic introduction. What can we do? Not enough, but we can soften the impact and we can do a lot that has at least some bearable impacts soon, if we are not too emotional. I give a very interesting example. Again, our world in data. What are the safest on the left and what are the cleanest sources of energy today in the world? And on the left, you see the death rates per terawatt of electricity produced. And the 4 best ones are solar, wind, nuclear, and hydropower. Biomass is burning wood, and yeah, it's not so easy to recycle because it grows a bit slower than it burns. So you have a problem there. And you don't have much. And the rest is not okay, we know that. But that, yeah, oil, coal, natural gas, but also biomass, because the dust of burning wood is very dangerous, a lot more dangerous than nuclear. And on the right, you see the greenhouse gases, and it is the same 4 that are good. So why should we be scared for nuclear waste? I mean, half of the waste is coming from hospitals. When you break your leg, you need an X-ray. When you feel a lump in your belly, they make a scan with a nuclear liquid. When you have cancer, you will be treated with radiotherapy, with isotopes that will be waste. So we will have nuclear waste anyway, and more, because medicine is evolving a lot in nuclear technologies, more and more. Also for better imaging, and new systems now are targeting with kind of trained molecules that target the cancer cells, and they have a little extra molecule hanging on their tail, which is a radioactive isotope that kills the cancer cell without killing adjacent healthy cells. This radiation, broader damage, collateral damage of therapy is getting a lot less now. I was looking at different studies, like what is the total impact of nuclear technology on the planet, even if you add the military. So we have Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island, and we have Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and you have the direct deaths, and then you have the radiation cancers on a delay of maximum 30 years. And that is, worst case, between 200 and 400,000 victims in 80 years' time. And in traffic accidents, every year 1.3 million people die, which is 145 people per hour, which is 1 Boeing 737 every hour that crashes. That's car traffic. And we are a little bit afraid to fly, and we love our cars. So 80 years of nuclear technology, civic and military together, created less victims than 4 months of car traffic. And then die Groenen, they went to brown coal. I mean, I saw the brown coal destruction in Germany. I mean, what a disaster. Because they were not rational, they were emotional. Yes, waste is going to explode. No, it can't. We are all children of radioactive radiation. There would be no mutation and no species if there would be no random mutation by nature. It makes monsters and viruses and people with 7 legs. If a woman gets pregnant, the first 24 hours, 99% of those pregnancies are killed immediately because the mutations are too random. The body rejects them immediately. Nature is a lot more wild in its genetical manipulation than our laboratories. And I think we would not be here without the mix of Darwinistic selection and random. I mean, evolution is random mutation. And mutation is 99% induced by radiation. The background radon radiation, I mean, the core of the Earth is radioactive. Waste is not even a problem. We are the problem, because waste, if we have tectonic plates, like in Japan, there is one plate that goes subduction under the other and it melts after 500,000 years. That crust of the Earth melts back into the core of the planet. And that is already radioactive, so that radiation comes home, so to speak. Problem is there are only 5, 6, 7 locations on the planet where the crust goes into subduction. And there is no solidarity in the United Nations, and they said every country has to store its own nuclear waste. No, if they would all work together and use those 7 places where we know if we drill a hole here of 1 kilometer deep, we fill it with the waste, we put some concrete on top, and it will melt in 500,000 years. 2 times the half times, it's already at 10-20% of its actual radiation, and it will melt into a radioactive soup of the deep core of the planet. No problems whatsoever. But you need solidarity. The fact that we are suffering from cognitive dissonance and that we don't see how selfish and egotistic we are the Sustainable Development Goals. I always wondered why economical growth is in there. Decent work and economic growth. I thought, what am I hearing and reading? And I said, okay, climate action, life below water, life on land. But all the ones that I put a black line around, there is only one beneficiary species, and it's us. Mankind says, me. No poverty, hunger, health, quality education, gender equality, clean water. Me, everything is for us. And I said, guys, this is not okay. You have to, yes, we are working on it. It's the same guys who make these planetary boundary schemes. They reordered the Sustainable Development Goals, and they said, look, it's true. The ecosystem services that we use are in the top. Our economy and our society would not be able to exist if this foundation of the pie, which is a lot more important, this is in proportion to their importance in the machinery of the planet. If those 4 are not healthy, all the rest is not even possible anymore. So forget that scheme. If you see it, replace it. Show this to people. They made it. It exists. It's easy to find on internet. This is showing priorities. Capitalism can be replaced. This is an example of a cooperative energy factory of 20, 30, 40 windmills near Ghent. 100% owned by citizens. It's a cooperative energy society called EcoPower. Even the board is citizens. No money goes to the Cayman Islands or to Tractebel or to Engie or to whatever kind of under-the-table shareholder structure. So those people have a second income, they have savings, they stimulate other people to buy shares. And magic, there are no NIMBYs. The not in my backyard lawsuits. We are against the windmill. Windmills are good for nature, but not in my village. Not one lawsuit against the building permit because it's their own windmills. The citizens love the windmills because it's their money, it's a second income, and it's good for the environment. So we start to also reduce polarization in society if they are less poor and if they participate. So if capitalism becomes accessible for everybody in a cooperative model, and if it stops being extractive, and it looks at nature not as a factory, but as a common, we start to work for each other again instead of working for those 8 guys that own half of the richness of the world. And there are examples of nature-inclusive agriculture. This is Nepcastle in Sussex in the United Kingdom. On the left, you see what it was like 15, 20 years ago. It was a dairy milk farm that went bankrupt. It was bought by people who said, we are going to test something new, which is zero-intervention agriculture, without fertilizers, without pesticides. And we put species and big cattle on it, and we take away all the fences. We sanitize the water system and the rivers, and we wait. No pesticides, nothing, no intervention. 4 years of misery. Insects here, snails, blah, blah. And then the whole thing started to settle, and the cows went to where there was grassland, and they made new grassland. The insects were attracting predators who ate those insects. Many animals that were threatened in England are there. You have bats, otter, all kinds of beavers, and all kinds of new wildlife. And it became the most profitable farm of the United Kingdom. Not anymore in kilograms per hectare, but their bio steak is the best of the United Kingdom, and it's in the best Michelin star restaurants in London that you can taste it. And they have a castle with a bed and breakfast and natural education for people who want to apply this in their own gardens and so on. So it is also changing the life of the people who visited it. There is a problem with urbanism. Belgium is the worst in the world in urban sprawl. 60% of Flanders is not living in villages nor in cities, but living in villas, 4 facade houses, in the middle of nowhere, where public transport is not profitable because there are too many stops with not enough people per stop. So we have the European record in money that we spend on cars, as well in percentage of the GDP as in money spent per person. And this is the difference from what it costs in roads and pipes and sewage and cables per unit, per housing unit in the city and in sprawl. It's a factor 10 almost, from 10 to 100. It's a factor 10 almost. This is an interesting PhD from KU Leuven, where you see that in the middle here, you have the total ecological impact of a 19th century 2-facade house, not insulated. And on the left, you have a villa in the middle of nowhere. They have the same ecological, this is a passive villa. I'll take 30 centimeters of insulation, photovoltaic, heat pump, all the tech you can want, but in the middle of nowhere, 2 cars, lots of traffic jam time, commuting time, you have to drive 1 hour before you reach the job. Nothing is there in your villa neighborhood, no shop, no schools, no theater, no culture, no cafe, no fun like in the city. So there you see that the city is a lot more ecological even if you don't insulate it. And here you see the carbon emissions per typology. The big villa is per family 8.4 tons per year. The small villa 5.2, the terraced house 4 tons, and an apartment in a high-density city 1.2 tons. Same insulation, same technology. Because it only loses heat in the front and in the back facade. It's surrounded by neighbors, a big apartment block. Big news, nobody noticed it in the COVID pandemics. The incidence of COVID, not the absolute numbers, because there are more people in a city than in a village, but the percentage of COVID cases all over the world, the maps in Flanders, but also in the United States, and the study of Johns Hopkins University, there is no link between urban density and COVID. It's the opposite. On the countryside, the cases, or in Belgium, the cities are those white dots here. And the dark spots are never where the cities are. Why? If you live in urban sprawl, you don't sleep where you live, or you don't live where you sleep, because nothing is in your street. Everything you need is somewhere else and by car, and you have to displace 10, 20, 30 kilometers to go to the big shopping mall, but then the swimming pool and the scouts and the karate club is always something else. So a virus loves it when contaminated people have to travel all the time in a society because they hop from people to people. In America, the death rate was almost a double in rural areas, exactly for that reason. Nobody said this in the news. 2 years of COVID pandemic, nobody said that the city is it's difficult for lockdown if you don't have a garden or a terrace. That's something else. But you have a lot less cases. So, and this is really applicable on Cologne, on Köln. Köln is zu viel Abfluss. And too many concrete and stones, and it's sad, gray, and hard, and it's all over Europe. All the cities are ovens in the summer. We have to become green and permeable. I mean, this is the right kind of abfluss. This is a water line in a street. There is no gutter. There is no metal grill anymore. And there are plants and there is life. This is in the shopping center in Mechelen now. We have, instead of a gutter of 20 centimeters, we have 1 meter of plants. All the rainwater goes there. Less room for the car, more room for nature in our cities, because if we have to densify, to give land back to nature, we are flies and you cannot catch flies with vinegar. We need candy. Cities have to be attractive for us, cooler, greener. We love wildlife and animals next to where we live. This should be a jungle around the dome, instead of this cooking table in concrete and natural stone. In the summer, this is hell. Brussels, just behind the European Parliament. I live there, just like 500 meters from my house, my apartment. And I saw this. I said, I live there almost 17 years now. I think it was not like this a few years ago. So I went on internet to look, and it was like that. I found some old pictures, and I took my camera and my tripod to exactly the same spot, and I made those pictures of the condition today in the summer. And you see that with small parts that became inaccessible and they stopped maintenance, the number of migrating birds and wildlife and plants and flowers is exploding in that park. People are loving it. Children are looking at young ducks, young swans, young birds. I mean, the park became smaller. Some parts are not accessible for us anymore. But mentally, it gets bigger for all the visitors. They love it. So what you have to do with your garden is that one guy there, not all the rest. That should be forbidden to cut your grass. And this is not invented. I cut this out of a publicity 10 years ago, Aldi. You bought some nice piece of green land for a villa. And then the contractor says, no, my machines, we cut all the trees, and then you don't have privacy anymore, so you buy a wooden fence and you have some rasen, some like post-nuclear millimeter. Every snail, every animal, you kill it with insecticides and with sprays, but then you miss wildlife. But then Aldi has a solution. You can buy ecological animals for in the garden made in China, and they all work on solar cells. It's super ecological. I mean, it's almost a joke. And I just found it in Aldi publicity, that this is the reason why we kill pieces of nature and cause more and more stau. Again, we are not okay. We could be okay if we don't do that, and if we recycle our what we have. Like this is Arsenal, famous football team in London. The football stadium by Alice and Morrison Architects was transformed into a housing project. And the field became a vegetable garden. Most stadiums that we don't use are demolished or are just empty for 20 years because we have no clue what to do with them. So this is where our creativity could make a difference. Heritage. Please, Cologne, build a tower that is higher than your dome as soon as possible. I always forget, Juan Pablo, you told me, what is the Cornish again? I forget that word. It's with an ow. The traufe. I mean, all the route, the traufe. I mean, your traufe of the past cannot be the limit of your future. You know this little blauwe Männchen, the Smurfen? You will stay a village of Strumpfen if you don't dare to. Your past is important. I've been working as a heritage restoration architect all my life. Like 20-30% of my projects are restorations of listed monuments. But I love to change a church into a supermarket or into a swimming pool, like here in London, bought by Richard Branson, a fitness club. It was an empty abbey. Then it was for a time a psychiatric hospital, and it was empty again. And then he bought it, became a big wellness and fitness, and the church became a swimming pool. I mean, youth is finally going to church again. Why not? We should not be taxidermists who kill our heritage by putting it in formol in a glass pot. And then across the street, you can look at an empty church with a beer in your hand. At a dead, no, that building should be alive. Use what you have on the countryside. This is a silo in Aarhus, which is a small rural village in a town in Denmark. And that silo became this family tower. And this is the same tower seen in the context. Yeah, but it's a rupture of scale. Yeah, the church also. Don't tell me that if this is a watch and 2 bells, that it's okay. And when those bells and that watch, that big clock become of 10 families, then it's a problem. Why? It's just another tower. It's not a church. It's a housing tower. We are changing all the time. We are not living in the houses of the 17th century anymore. They burn. They are like in Monschau with black wood and with white walls. I mean, we are not. If we look at our heritage look on environment, it's as if we are making Teslas that look like an old wooden chariot. If you live in an historical city, your Tesla should look like an old horse and carriage with plastic horses, but the technology of the Tesla is inside. And your phone should look like a postal pigeon in plastic. It flips open and you have a touchscreen inside. I mean, this is how we look at buildings today if we talk about heritage. This is sick, this is nostalgia, which is very dangerous because you have to love your heritage so much that you want to dance with it and keep it alive. And taxidermy is the opposite. It's saying it's dead, the best is in the past, we can't use it anymore. That's good for the pyramids in Egypt, which heritage, which is the unique pieces that are like museum pieces. You don't have to put a supermarket in the pyramids, of course, or in the dome. In a standard church, you can make or in an old theater, like in Venice, there is a spa in a beautiful theater in Venice. This is an old water basin near Bucharest, and Ceausescu wanted to turn it into a holiday and park with roller coasters and French fries and stuff. Luckily, they killed him just in time. Because this is on the top left photo here, you see the water basin. And by doing nothing for 30 years, this came spontaneously. And now it's a listed UNESCO wildlife reserve, but visited. So all the paths for children and bird watchers and photographers with cabins to have your big zoom lens hidden and so on. So you can visit it, like 10-15% is accessible for all the people who love to see wildlife, but it's on the edge of the city. It's the most visited natural environment of Bucharest. And you had to do nothing. There was not one tree planted, just make the paths and the watchtowers, that's it, and some information panels. So nature is very fast in paying back and rewarding us if we become spatially more modest. If we don't want everything, we will get a lot more back. So the pessimist is becoming optimist now when I go on. This is an example southeast of Brussels, where a park was 2 football fields. They kept one on the left, it's out of the view. And this pink house here with the gray wall is this one. The gray wall and the pink house with a little square window is there. And there was a concrete tube under the field. And we have flooding problems in Belgium, so they said we want to meander the river again. That if the water rises, a tube has a limited amount of water, and there is more water, it cannot overflow. A river that meanders, and it has like banks that are slightly in a slope. We are going to redo that again. The third picture is taken from there, looking in this direction. This curve here is this curve. And this is 3 years later. I mean, if you can go from the ecosystem that in the autumn has only one species, that is the yellow leaf blower, and you get this after 3-4 years, then the city is attractive. And they still have one football field. So the kids didn't lose all their playing facilities. So there is good news if we want to see and do it. What did we try as a Flemish government architect? My ambition was to improve and promote architectural quality. Main task, support and guidance of public clients. And it was optional. It was not compulsory to work with the Bouwmeester, only the ones who wanted good architecture and a good competition. And then we had to actively contribute to vision and reflection also. In society, in the market, in developers, in the whole investment sector. And always done in collaboration with all those sectors. And my subtasks were communicate and stimulate awareness, find bugs in legislation, and give opportunities to young architects. It was founded in 1999, so we have already more than almost 25 years of Bouwmeesters. I was number 5, now we are number 6. And we have a number of instruments, the open call, which was interested here. I will talk about it a bit more in the next slide. Masterproof is for starter architects. The award for best clients is the award Vivina de Meester. Space Lab is a laboratory for experimental research and pilot projects that are linked to it to test out new scenarios and new building technologies and new urban design plans and schemes. The label is a small scholarship to do research on a certain topic. It's connected to an exhibition afterwards. Adaptive reuse of churches. We are, the Bouwmeesters in Flanders are already like 10 years working to change the affectation of 450 empty churches. Can be supermarkets, can be circus schools, can be food markets for local bioagricultural sales of vegetables in a local village. Very beautiful. It can be a fossarium for urne, for the ashes of the people who have been cremated. It can be a cultural meeting center. It can be a community center. It can be new offices for the town hall. Many different interesting programs in churches. Then the scan is something I created for small municipalities that they can have an external team do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of their urban condition, of their empty buildings, pollution, bad planning, good planning, and so on. Then we do advice, we organize juries, we communicate in a number of sessions and lectures. And I gave, in the 4 years that I was Bouwmeester, 296 keynote lectures in 4 years. That was very tiresome, because I was not paid extra, and I did them all in the evenings in extra time. The open call competitions, and this is interesting for, I think, Germany. So it started from the beginning, from the first Bouwmeester. The target is to assist local authorities in to become a better client. And it can be anything. It can be building, can be landscape, can be master planning. And it's upon request, no obligation. I said this already. Early start, so we go on board 1 to 2 years before the competition is there. Because most of the time the question is not okay. Yeah, we want an extra school. Wait. How many schools you have? 4. Why do you want to build here? Yeah, there is some place here, but did you compare the 4 schools? And what about mobility and parents? Where are the cars of the parents? Is there traffic jam problems? Which school is growing? It's not because you have a hole in your housing block. Maybe the other school needs more classrooms. I know we didn't do that study. How much is your budget? How many classes do you want? Your budget is 2 times too small. What is your gross surfaces, gross net? You forgot the heating. You forgot how many personnel extra. Yeah, we don't have money for extra personnel. You can't afford that project. I mean, we were really there to help them from making stupid competitions. Because the winner then they said, yeah, in fact, now we realized we can't do this. You won, but bye. We can't build it. And then we make together the project definition, which is sometimes 100 pages with all the requirements. And the guys in the competition have to read this. They don't have to prove everything, but it's good to give an idea in what direction you have to formulate a concept. And it's published 2 times per year. We get some 100, sometimes 100, 150 European candidates, mixed teams, a Belgian team with an English, with foreign teams, because it's a European market. We have to publish everything. But we always worked in 2 phases. First phase, only your portfolio, and 1 page of text in which you describe the team, with the different offices in the team, and what is at stake for you in this competition. Why are you participating, and what would be your angle of attack to the problem? Like if you want to build a graveyard, and an architect says, I am against graveyards, that's why I want to participate, I would choose him. Because you get an interesting solution, maybe. So you don't need to show that you fucked up already 4 graveyards to have the right to fuck up a 5th one. So we never looked at realized references. Because we were looking for good designers. We saw in each team there was a beginner who had good student projects. And he associated with an experienced office that would stop him from running away in crazy ideas. But his creativity was on board, and he had a first reference if they want. So, and that was exceptional because we had the right legally to choose without all these classical fee references, so many square meters, at least 5 schools of more than 1,250 square meters. Sometimes it stinks because exactly the reference that only 2 offices comply because the politicians knew that they have the only ones with that exact reference. So we really were also careful that it's really open. We select 10 of the 140, and the client takes 3, 4, 5 out of those 10, and they will be doing the competition, and they get the same decent amount of money to participate. So deliverables are small, 20, 30 pages of A3, a fee between 15 to 30, 40,000 euros. No model, unless the client pays 10,000 euro, 15,000 euro extra for a model if he wants to see one. So it's very important. The winner gets the assignment. There is no negotiation afterwards with other teams. The winner is the winner, and we know, and we don't decide, we help the client to choose. The Bouwmeester and his team have only 1 vote in a jury of maybe 12 people. So it's not a traditional competition. You choose a team and its creativity, not the exact plan with the exact... No building will be built as it is designed in the competition. It's the concept. It's not the details. And we get a high quality results and many projects are realized. And related to the fees, well, the project fees, we calculate them also, and we say you will all have to make an offer between 11.5 and 12%. Why do we do this? Because legally we have to count the fee for like 30, 40% of the points. But if we make the margin small, narrow, that's not forbidden in the law, they all have 48 on 50 or 49 on 50. So this was our trick to say fuck to the inspection of finance in Belgium. We said, look, we counted 40% of the points or 50% of the points are on the fee, but they all have 46, 47, and 48. So if we give somebody like 4 points difference in the quality of the design, he's the winner anyway. So we were sure that whatever the fee was, the margin was high enough, 11 to 12 to 13, 14%. And the differences between the candidates were not relevant enough to have an impact on the final total of the points. So we first chose who we wanted, because the points on the quality were the ones who made the difference. It's a very simple trick. To be conform, it's many people who became Bouwmeester came from the Jesuits. So, and the competition fee is correctly, during my mandate, we started from 7, we asked also, every submission, they had to make a chart with how much they worked. We had a chart, like we knew how many hours were each, and then we knew what we paid, so it was €7 per hour in the competition. That was not, and then less deliverables, more fee, they were 15. By the end of my 4-year mandate, we reached between 20 and €25 per hour, which is more or less your overhead cost at competition level. What can you do in reality? This is one of the open call competitions. The link is there. You can see hundreds of realized projects. I'm not going to do this, or the lecture will last until tomorrow. So, but this is like Cologne, this is a big concrete plate in Sint-Nicolaas, which is a city in Flanders. And the winner made, because there is a parking in this figure here. And you see it here. This is where there is an underground parking and not enough soil for trees. There is full soil, full earth in the middle, and there is full earth on all the terraces of the cafe, so they planted almost 300 trees. I mean, this is what we should do in cities. And a few things of our office, and that is to conclude already. And I'm not going to do 20 photos per project, like 2-3 photos very fast. This is building cheap housing together with logistics and industry. So this industrial project here, this is logistics and 2 levels, and this is also 2 levels of logistics with small makers and stuff. This is the road for the trucks, and there is another road here because this is the access for the housing on top. And this is 4, and there is like 5, 6 levels of affordable housing, and this is outside staircases. They are outside of the heated volume to save money. Here you can see those outside staircases here. This is the housing side, where you have the logistics have some shops where they sell stuff, and the people go up here to their housing. And this is the logistics street. This is during the construction site, but this is where today you will see little trucks. It's not heavy industry, no noise, no smell, no butchers, but soft industry, recycling of computers, creativity, pottery, culture, and so on. And the roof of that 2 levels of industry is gardens, is a tartan play garden for children, is a greenhouse for vegetables, and these are those with bicycle storages. These are the circulations. The elevators are in the protected volume. They are just in the building. And you see that the target group is immigrant housing, so this is an immigrant family living with a view on the greenhouse on the roof. This was the day that they finished everything. So the roof, there is no plants yet in the greenhouse because it was taken 5 days after the reception of the project. This is another industrial site, an empty factory in Ghent, and we won a competition for the biggest co-housing, 56 families plus a big medical care center of the neighborhood. We went to 8 levels high, a very high density. This part became a little park, and this we did a combination of accessible grass for kids and a lot of rewilding, 0 maintenance green, and they have an urban farm on the roof. It gives 500 kilos of vegetables per month for those 56 families. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the same project, the co-housing, where you see the gardening, the playgrounds. There is the urban farm on that roof. And this is the park, a part of the park in the point of the site, which we also designed. And you see there is no rasen, which is 5 millimeters, so this is all like laissez-faire, let it grow, let it blow, let it blossom. This is a competition we won for a big school. This is the render. We demolished a wing which was here, only 1 level high, and we added a 4-level high wing on pilotis here, and all the playgrounds that were next to the buildings on concrete tiles, we put them on the ground floor. We made that open. We added a big sports hall on columns under which, because there were 4 parkings, all the parking is under this, and we had lots of green. We added 30% more classes. There were 1,380 children from 3 till 18 years old, and the amount of green went up with 40%, and the landscaping around the school. And many of the green is don't cut, don't maintenance free. Like this is totally rewilded for bugs and for small wildlife, and they are part of the réseau nature now, of the wildlife protected area of the Brussels region. This is a natural reserve, the garden of the school. It's protected, listed, natural reserve. They have 1,200 species in official registered observations by nature watches in the gardens of the school. Which school becomes a natural ecosystem today in our design heads? If you don't, and we designed it, after 3 years it was totally kaput, because the contract of that school group gave it to big guys with machines who cut everything. And then the teacher said, no, this was not a school that those architects designed for us. We didn't hear about it. We only heard it when they won a prize, and then we heard it went down, and then the teachers and the students fought back. They went to do the maintenance themselves, and to go to zero maintenance, they saved a shitload of money by doing no maintenance anymore of those gardens. Another, you see, no green fields. We refused to do 4 facade houses for 20 years almost. Huh? You can want contemporary top design villa in the middle of nowhere, but it's a bit like a perfect surgical technique without scars to amputate the wrong leg. The surgeon refuses it. You should not accept assignments that are not good for nature. Low density project in the middle of nowhere, we refused. You can only lower your pants once, and then you can't look in the mirror anymore. This is an old distillery with 3 offices. We did it completely into housing. The silos were apartments by Stefan Beel. Goris did this, and we did the cubes with housing, and this is the factory for restoring antique. And underground you have a big parking, and on the roof of the parking we made this forest, because we made 80 centimeters of lava stone, lightweight, and the whole roof is slightly sloped, only 0.5%. And in this street here, we made a trench of 2 meters wide and 6 meters deep, full of gravel, and the water that is not sucked up by the trees is going back to the phreatic level. It's a bit like in Switzerland, where forests are on top of granite. The granite is cracked and the rainwater goes to the deeper levels anyway. So we made a permeable project with a parking that for the rain and the phreatic deeper levels, that parking is not an obstacle anymore. I was contacted for a master plan of 120 housing units in a wetland, and they said, this is not so ecological and flooded often. We are not going to build that, we want something else. And after 3 days, we came up with this idea. The Excel of the developer had to remain the same. 120 houses on 6 hectares. So we said, if we want to make more non-accessible rewilded wetland, we need more units because you are selling less land. So we made 2 facade houses in those streets, here and here, and blocks of 8 levels with 4 apartments per level. So we had 185 units on 2 hectares, and we had 4 hectares of human not accessible wetland, like Les Hauts-de-Fagne, just across the border in Wallonie. So there are wooden paths that you can use, but the rest is really zero maintenance. We won a competition. We just started getting the building permit. I mean, I sold my shares a year ago. I'm not in the office anymore. But I was involved in this project. This is a factory of AstraZeneca, who made one of the vaccines of COVID. But they left it. It was empty, but it was all cars and 2-level boxes, very mineral. This is the condition it was before. This is the site. 70% built, and all the rest was upfloes and grass and asphalt and concrete. And we said, okay, we built 3 levels, 5 levels, 8 levels. We built a few hundred housing units, and 17% will become an urban forest. Half of it accessible, half of it rewilded and non-accessible. This is the result. The Groenen were against because they said the density is too high. But they don't have a map of the density of the commune. No city in Belgium has a density map. So I thought, and now they are going to make them finally, because everybody was just, you feel it in your intuition that it is too dense. Yeah, like this you cannot judge projects. And then the politicians don't dare to contradict NIMBY citizens. So we suffered a lot, 2-3 years time loss before we got the permit here. Because it is ecological. It is really like the forest that I showed you in the other project. They said, yeah, those trees will not grow because those green rooms are too small. And the ones in the distillery here, these ones, they are 16 by 18 meters. And they said that these ones are too small and they are 40 by 60 meters. I said, no, but we did the other one. Yeah, but we don't believe you. But believe, it's a picture of a realized project. Yeah, we still don't believe you. I mean, you cannot discuss with people like that. You talked about a project that is maybe going to be demolished or not. When we were chatting here, I think Justice or something. Well, we had a tower, an office tower in Brussels, a mini competition that we won. It was an empty building. It has been offices of an insurance company. It was a daycare hospital on 2 levels as a temporary use. And we redesigned it. This is a realized photo of the realized project. We added balconies on both sides because the corridor was in the middle. So on the facade you have living and all the bedrooms, with each of the rooms have 2-meter terrace with sliding solar panels in the facade. So the facade is changing all the time. So here you see the ground floor, you have offices, 2 levels, and then all the rest you have these 2-meter balconies here with sliding panels. And this is the entrance hall, and this is the view. It's a grid of columns. We kept the complete concrete skeleton and we stripped all the rest and we insulated it. It's a passive housing tower. We made a new facade. And then this is the last project. It is a competition we won to create a mixed-use project on the canal in Brussels with a semi-underground, well, no, we could make them where we want. A big sports hall, which was almost the size of the plot. A boxing club, a yoga and ballet room, and 2 levels of kita, of kindergarten. And we said, okay, but the sports hall is the size of the plot. If we make the sports hall on top, we cannot make a kita with a courtyard because there is a big hall on top and there is no sunlight coming in. So we are going to inverse it. We're going to put the sports hall down, but then you have a problem because the walls of the kita are resting on the roof of the sports hall. So we said we will make 4 big metal trusses. They are 2 levels high, these metal structures. This is 2 levels of kita. These 2 levels. They are here, those trusses. And then we have hanging elements here, and the ceiling of the sports hall is hanging on those metal trusses. And those metal trusses, the kita is not resting on the sports hall. We inverted the whole system. So you can see this from the canal. You see the structures here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is cantilevering. 2 levels of kindergarten. This is yoga, and in the back with the courtyard in between the boxing. And this and half underground, this is the 7-meter high sports hall, which is this. This is a street, this is the ground level on the street. An internal street that during day is open all day for public passage. This is the kindergarten. You see the metal structures inside. You see the courtyard. This is the courtyard. And we had the news only 2-3 weeks ago. Mies van der Rohe Award, 1,000 projects, 200 projects, now 40 nominees. We are among the last 40. So we will be participating in the touring exhibition of the Mies van der Rohe Award in Europe the coming year with that project. My last slide is a kind of resume. We destroy too much of the autonomous, self-regulating natural structure of the planet. So we first have to stop that destruction, and then we have to give space back to nature and give it time to heal and to rebuild itself. We deserve to call ourselves intelligent species as long as we prove to be the best adaptive species to the dangers of nature. And we became a stupid species the moment we started to adapt nature to our needs in a destructive way. We are made too many people who want way too much from our mother. Mother Nature made one big mistake, and that is creating us. Earth is very strong, but the biosphere is not. Granite will survive us, but wildlife not. We are destroying the system that creates us and that keeps us alive. So we have to learn to let go. We don't own this planet. We belong to it. It doesn't belong to us. It will take centuries for us to get out of trouble, but it is never too late for action. And so The main problem is between our ears. And solidarity is necessary, so the solution is sitting next to you in the audience. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank. Das war jetzt ein großer Rundumschlag mit einem Ende am Beginn. Und wir werden jetzt zusammen ein wenig sprechen über die Dinge, die Sie angerissen haben und über die Frage, wie gehen wir um mit der Tatsache, dass wir eigentlich sehr viel wissen, aber trotzdem zu wenig tun. Ich glaube, das ist eine der Zentralfragen. Und dieser Frage werden wir gemeinsam mit Ihnen und gemeinsam mit Erik Brüssel nachgehen, der jetzt mit mir die zweite Runde moderieren wird und versuchen wird, so ein bisschen die Fragen, so.
I would invite everybody to ask questions. There are no stupid questions. There are only stupid answers. So the only ones who have to be nervous is us, not you.
Okay. Ja, also Sie sind herzlich eingeladen, sowohl Fragen wie auch Einwürfe zu stellen. Und mir sind 2, 3 Dinge im Vorbereitung durch den Kopf gegangen. Und zwar erstens, ja, so weit, so schrecklich, hatte ich schon gesagt, dass es darum geht, die Dinge, die wir alle wissen, in Realität zu bringen. Und was mir so aufgefallen oder eingefallen ist, ist, dass das, was eigentlich notwendig wäre, vielleicht im Rahmen des Kapitalismus, der ja wie soll ich sagen, verkauft wird als Grundmaxime des menschlichen Handels, also quasi als genetisch angelegt im Menschen, ist dieses System Kapitalismus, was eine sehr fragwürdige These ist aus meiner Sicht, wie wir eigentlich im Rahmen dieses Systems, das im Moment ja doch das Handeln bestimmt in so sehr vielen Ebenen, eigentlich die notwendigen Veränderungen hinkriegen. Das ist die eine Frage. Und die andere Frage ist, was wir ungeachtet dessen, dass eben sehr viele Dinge über dieses System determiniert sind, wie wir uns vielleicht dennoch emanzipieren. Es gab ja eine Reihe von Beispielen, um die Spielräume, die in diesem System existieren, auszuloten und zu nutzen. Und dieses Paradoxon, das ist so eine Fragestellung, die ich denke spannend ist und die wir besprechen sollten. Und ich glaube, es geht um eine strategische Herangehensweise, es geht um kleine Schritte, wurde gezeigt. Und dennoch geht es auch darum, das Große und Ganze nicht aus dem Blick zu verlieren. Ja, würden Sie jetzt, oder andersrum, gibt es vielleicht im Rahmen dieser Fragestellung Einwürfe und weitere Ideen?
Ja, ich würde vielleicht gerne den Begriff Demokratie ins Spiel bringen, ne, weil erstmal, thank you, Leo, for Dr. Leo, I would say, for shaking my belief in architecture and democracy, and well, I regained my belief in architecture a bit during the last slides, but my belief in democracy to solve these global problems is still a lot shaken. And democracy is a luxury of saturated societies, I think. And so what is your solution? We have political parties from left to right who go on telling this fairy tale of consumerism. And so nothing has happened in a democracy. Is not as fast and as rapid as it takes, as you have shown. So what is your vision of a democratic process of planning and so on in a country like here in Cologne? If you have a small measure of car reducing, there is someone who sues you and takes it to court because he is not allowed to park in front of the bakery anymore. So what do you say to this issue of democratic planning and process in the speed that is needed?
Okay, Reintroducing guillotine? No. We saw a bit of an example that worked during the pandemic because science was advising politics. I think democracy on its own is not able to do it. And when there is an emergency, politicians started to listen to doctors, like in the pandemic. Politicians had the final word. But medical teams said, take care, your main trigger is your intensive care units. If you lose those ones, you cannot also help other diseases and car crashes. And so this is the potentiometer. If the intensive care units are under pressure, we will tighten the measures a bit, longer lockdown, a bit longer curfew, stay at home. If they have extra beds, we can loosen again. So it was like driving in traffic jam. The steering wheel is moving, the speed is adapted every 2 weeks on how the pandemic is moving. And that's a bit contradictory to a legislative democracy that says we have a law, so the following 20 or 200 kilometers, I will drive with my steering wheel turning 2 degrees to the right and a speed of 70. You will hit everything in complex traffic because you have to steer all the time and accelerate and decelerate. So what a democracy needs, and in the beginning I thought it was technocracy, but that's not good because then experts like us, like doctors, they take over, they replace the politicians. And that would not be good for the citizen. They don't accept that. They want to elect, they want to have this democratical game. But like, if you don't put experts at the steering wheel of the car, of society, it is politics who drive, but you create the GPS. And I think this is where we belong, the experts, the architects, the doctors, the academics. A GPS always honestly says, this is a dead-end street. You missed the exit, you have to take the next one, and this is 2 possible detours. One is with toll, the other one is slower but cheaper. And the driver can choose, but the GPS gives all the time authentic, updated information. The pandemic is a bit more, biodiversity is a bit accelerating, or there is an energy crisis. We discover a new design to have thermal buildings that are more efficient with natural products and a compact design and so on. And the GPS gives new input to the driver. He can still choose, he can commit suicide, the driver. But at least he knows what to choose and what the impacts are. This is the position of a Bouwmeester. I could say everything I wanted because I had nothing to say in the final decision. I could talk about everything, I could mention every problem. I said in the press, the 4-facade villa is a crime. It is a lot worse than creating new clubs for cigar smokers in kindergartens. Freestanding sprawl buildings are destructive for society, for nature, for traffic jams, for emissions, for everything. And there was a big scandal in the press, but many towns started to change their policy. I got letters, thank you. Last Sunday with the children, we had 2 extra pieces of land behind our villa for the daughter and the granddaughter. We are probably going to move to the city in 20 years. We are going to give that land back to nature. Not everybody did that, but there was an impact. The debate was started. So I don't know, it can't solve everything, but your question is right, spot on. I think a democracy as it is today is not okay. I don't want to put China and Singapore, and although Singapore is lots of results on the sustainability, but it's a very dictatorial regime. So, but like capitalism is not the problem. The problem is it's not accessible for everybody, and the results are not shared. And I think it's the same with democracy. It's not accessible for everybody in the same way, and they stopped listening to experts. By the way, if experts in the past had a good idea, like it's not good to murder, they didn't say it themselves. They said it came from the great googly moogly in the sky and was cut in a stone table. And then everybody believed it. If a guy like Moses said, I think it's better for you that you don't kill, they would have killed him. They killed Jesus. I mean, I'm not religious, but people who are experts in one vector of society where they are right, they are the first ones to get killed. So put it on a GPS, put it on something that cannot be stigmatized, and democracy will start to become wiser.
Yes. Ja, wobei die Frage, dass dieses Navigationssystem ja auch interessengesteuert sein kann. Das ist ja möglicherweise nicht neutral ja im Raum stehen.
Of course, no solution is waterproof. Eh? There is always, I mean, somebody has to lock up Donald Trump. I mean, it's probably the cases where they by accident threw away the baby and they raised the placenta, but that happens sometimes. You had a question?
Pablo's microphone.
Mobile microphone. Sorry.
I do have a question. In Germany, a lot of the issues that you presented this evening are treated through regulative devices like KFC, that's an energy savings program, which is almost at the level of a passive house for social housing. So if you want to build today social housing in Germany, you have to have smaller windows with 3 layers of glazing and a lot of insulation, a lot of insulation. And you have a great mechanical system to ventilate your house, etc. No? And maybe your windows don't even open at night, depending on where you are. So are you telling us that we totally screwed up in Germany, like we're just barking up the wrong tree, or yes?
Partially. I think you should do efforts for climate change because it's racing up and it will overtake the other problems very soon. I mean, we saw the last years what happened. But land use and biodiversity are a lot worse. And this technocratic thing, technology, insulate, not over-insulate. Don't waste money on 10% of your housing and leave all the rest as it is, because then your final result, your final impact, even on the climate and on the emissions, should be as high as possible for the investments you do. So doing 10 houses very good and very expensive and leaving all the rest because your money is gone is not wise. I think you should have a calculation on your complete sector and add to that system. So you didn't screw up, but you put all the money on one horse. And that's not good if you want to win now and then in a gamble. And another thing, and it was linked to that question, is if you want to pass extra measures, democracy has another problem, that participating in democracy today is not conditional. You don't have to prove that you understood what it's about. There is it's a poem by a Dutch writer, inspraak zonder inzicht leidt tot uitspraak zonder uitzicht. So participation without understanding leads to things that people say that have no vision on solutions. Becomes absurd. So an educated democracy where like participatory processes start with the 500 citizens that want to participate, they get lectures for 3-4 months about real estate, profit, water, traffic, density, sun, all the things that you should know before you can have a judgment. We did that in Kortrijk with 500 citizens, 6 months educating courses. They couldn't say anything. And after 6 months, they had 6 months of participation with models, with drawings, with 25 persons per neighborhood. Man, density, high-rise, rewilding, green, mobility changes. Politicians got results that they never dared to talk about. They said, we want to do it, but we will do it behind the scenes and not announce it, because we are afraid for electoral damages. So I don't think you fucked up. I think there were a lot of misunderstandings in the Green parties. I think we come from a very technocratical vision on buildings because technology saved us from the worst for decades. The Industrial Revolution got us out of huge poverty, famine in Europe, floodings, diseases. All the cities were smelling like shit. All the rivers were full of waste. We had no water purification. In my youth in Antwerp, now and then the rivers were on fire because the petrochemical industry waste was explosive, was kerosene. I mean, we had no fish on any river in Antwerp 45 years ago. We come from, and that was, so we are rooted in technology, and now we have to get rid of that habit. So I think it's more a cultural heritage that you slowly have to get rid of than fucking up. I think we all will face that habit.
One question concerning your new position in Cologne. We are very glad that you joined the Gestaltungsbeirat, and we would like to learn something from Flanders, like the open oproep of the open call. Do you see any chance to make Cologne experiment with instruments like that, because what we see by now is that the competition culture is declining, and we have very little and even less competitions, open competitions for young architects, and we have this phenomenon of total contractors who bring their architects along. So what are your plans?
Gestaltungsbeirat can only answer the questions that they put us. So that's, you put two questions. In the Gestaltungsbeirat, they know me as a bit as the enfant terrible. If we have meetings in the conversation, I always break out and I say, well, it's only upflows. We visit the site and say, look, this should be twice as high. And then the people of heritage are getting a heart attack. But at least we have animated discussions that go fast to the core, and we always find unanimous attitudes. This is the nice thing, that we have a faster way of being very direct to each other, the 5 members, and we use a lot of humor. Because if you all talk, I'm right and the others are wrong, you don't get anywhere. So we have an open discussion system. We listen to everybody, we try to add value. Sometimes it's not as good as we dream, but better than what it was. So improving something and good enough is also, I mean, if everybody is compared with God and Zaha did, nobody is okay to get a building permit. So you have to also know that above average is good enough. Otherwise, not above average, but good above average. Second, the policies are not designed by the Gestaltungsbeirat. You have nothing to say about a Bouwmeester, competition culture and so on. But open competitions, like Europan visited me when I was a Bouwmeester. They wanted me to promote Europan in Belgium. I said, no way. 120 young architects are submitting 2 or 3 A4 panels, A0 panels, sorry. Huge panels in color with renders, and then only 10-20% of Europan projects of winners are executed because there is no guarantee and no budget. I said 2 phases, first phase 1 A4, 5 young teams are well paid to make those panels and not 120. I was once in a European jury with, I think, 80 or 90 submissions. We did them in 4 hours. It was 2 minutes per submission. You cannot analyze the concept. They can't present. Only the selected ones are invited to present. So it was horrible. I said, yeah, but it's an opportunity for young officers to lose a lot of money. I interrupted the guy. I said, look, if you come back in 5 years with Europan in 2 phases, well paid for 5 teams, and they have a guarantee that the winner, if it's not nonsense or too utopian what he drew, that it will be built, I will join you. I never heard him again.
I would add to this question, because, I don't know, if it's better like that.
Yes.
Because what you said first on a global scale was kind of frustrating. I know you agree with that, because you see 3 years, 2009, 2015, 2023, almost everything is red, and in 3 years, everything is red. So how to motivate somebody? And now you're asked to come to Cologne, to Gestaltungsbeirat, because I guess you did not apply for that job, but somebody asked you. And then you're asked for, how can we get more competitions? How can we be more dynamic in new approaches to Verfahren? And you say, well, actually, I can't do much about it, so don't want to offend you at all. But you're really an optimist. And from that point of view, if you had an office and you were 10 or 20 years younger, would you participate in Swiss competitions? Would you try to build in Belgium as a Cologne-based architect? Or would you be optimistic that something changes in Cologne within the next 10 years, for example?
I would be very active here. I think the BDA should be very active. Fight, debate, come on television, complain if you earn like shit. If the winner, if then after the competition they start to negotiate with the 3 best, the cheapest one gets the contract, that's not okay, and so on. Fight to have a Bouwmeester as soon as possible, because they can, that institution makes a big difference. Flanders in 20 years is on the map. We were a horrible country. In every village, it was the nephew architect of the mayor who was able to do the school. It was corrupt and rotten as hell. And 20 years later, we have a referred good architectural culture, example buildings. We have many visitors in our projects from all over Europe. So it is fight for Baukultur. It's a German word. I think it's very important. Fight for correct fees, fight for better payment. Say we want calculation of working time. Social media don't only promote the culture of design. I mean, architects make everything complicated. I heard once somebody say, if you ask an architect, how should I put chocolate pasta on a slice of bread, and he gives you 5 pages of explanations, you can never do it again in your life. So simplify things and fight for the big stuff that is at stake. I think escaping from Germany because here it's not okay, and participate in a market where your displacement eats a lot of time and where you have to look alliances that you don't have. Maybe sometimes if you have connections by accident, but improving the humus in which you have to grow here as a plant, the soil, the society soil in which you can grow as an architectural firm. I think improving that climate and that the procedures is very important. And I am talking about it, my co-members of the Gestaltungsbeirat are talking about it, and we deal with those designs a bit as a competition also, that we try to listen to the concept of the architect, we try to understand what their intentions were, because that's the best. If you say, but your concept is this, why did you draw this? Because that design is a bit contradictory to what you wanted. So it's also helping people to do better what they wanted to reach. So I see already a shift in how the Gestaltungsbeirat is treated by the people of the administration. Because heritage in the beginning were scared about us, because we said it should be higher, it should be this, it should be that. But then we give examples, we discuss with them. We also listen to their story. We know what heritage and restoration is. We have to be respectful for that aspect. And then you get a collaboration. But no Gestaltungsbeirat can do it without the BDA, and no BDA can do it without a change in politics and in administrative policies also, I think. It has to be a co-production of all the players.
Okay, so the problem, just a short answer from my side. So
okay.
Once you're discussing the projects which are put on your agenda, and you say that's already improving discussions, so maybe there's possibility to have more intense discussions on those things which you don't ever see in Gestaltungsbeirat, because schools and whatever
maybe.
else.
I think tomorrow there is a meeting about maybe improving our job a bit and improving the way we can give quality to the city. So we will talk tomorrow with people from the administration how we can do a bit more what we would like to do, because our input could be richer.
Yes.
And have more impact. But they have to agree.
I mean, you have a
I
level.
was partially asked, and I had to submit a candidature. I think they had more candidates, so they were all invited. But then there was a selection that was a bit broader. You had to submit with your curriculum and with a number of, and then you were chosen. So it's a mix of being asked to propose, and then you only wait a few weeks. You don't know if you're taken or not. So it was a double. It was invited competition for membership of Gestaltungsbeirat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question.
You say you have to react on questions put to you. So
it's projects, huh?
It's projects, but can this role be widened? Like you have shown, we have a problem of sealed surfaces in the cities.
Yeah, but you need a Bouwmeester.
We have here roads that traffic is taken out, but nothing changed. You have still the asphalt on the soil. Is that a topic you can actively introduce it to the discussion?
I think this is for a Bouwmeester. I think in the Gestaltungsbeirat we mention it, but it's too late because those projects are up for permit. They are already working on them for 2-3 years. Upflows and rewilding in green, you have to ask it 3 years earlier. So I think you need a Bouwmeester, because in Flanders there is a Bouwmeester, but in Ghent, in Antwerp, and in Brussels there is also a Bouwmeester. So all the big cities in Flanders have Bouwmeesters. I think Köln should have its own city Bouwmeester team. And a Bouwmeester as a team, the Flemish Bouwmeester as a team, the team stays. Some people are 18 years there. They work on ongoing files that, I mean, if the Bouwmeester switches, the new one jumps on a train that is driving on at high speed. And we have many ongoing projects. So those teams have all the data and the experience. So you need, in Ghent, I think the team is 6 or 8 people plus a Bouwmeester every 4 or 5 years. You can't do local projects. If you have an architect from the area of Köln, he cannot do projects for 4 or 5 years. When I was Bouwmeester in Flanders, my office could not do projects in Flanders. They could do projects in Brussels. And we did in Holland and in Wallonie to compensate. So there are some sacrifices. But I think that if you don't have a think tank that puts some constructive criticism on policies, it's very slow to get changes. To accelerate, I think you need a constant team. Yes? The micro there.
Do you have the impression that the city administration of Cologne is open to the idea of installing something like a Bouwmeester, because it would, to a certain degree, also give away a bit of power, although the final...
I don't know. You have... Yes?
Was? Nee. Also ich habe den Baumeister da ja in einer übergeordneten beratenden Funktion verstanden und nicht in einer entscheidenden.
Yeah, a Bouwmeester in Flanders never entscheides. And we are not compulsory. There are projects that are not submitted. But on the big projects, the Bouwmeester jumps to the press immediately. You immediately write an article in the press. So you have an influence. You are not the judge with the final word. The Bouwmeester is an authority, is not a source of power. I love that position, because you are the only one who can say to the emperor that he doesn't have clothes. You're a bit like the court jester, eh? Der Narr. You said it's Narr in German? So you are a bit the Narr of the court, because you are you're allowed to talk about the difficult. But another advantage of a Bouwmeester is it is an absorption sponge of electoral damages. Politics know they have to do something, and they know that it will be difficult for the citizens to accept, and they say, but this was not my decision, it's the Bouwmeester who told us with the calculation that we have to do it, I'm sorry. It's really necessary, but it's his fault. And I said, put the blame on me, I don't have to be elected, I'm gone in 4 years. So it's politics like this. They said, Guy, you're right, but we'll never say this in the press. We're going to do what you want, but slower, and we will not announce it, or we are fucked in the next election. We had a minister of ecology who said once, after he stepped down, he said, I knew perfectly what we have to do. But if I say that in the press, they will never elect me again. So this is this democracy weakness again that comes up. And a Bouwmeester is good to bridge that gap sometimes. So we will talk about it tomorrow probably, that this is also an institutional void that could help Cologne to give politicians more freedom, less electoral damage. A Bouwmeester is not a dictator that takes over power.
Where will you talk about that tomorrow? In the Gestaltungsbeirat?
No, we have a meeting in the morning about the task of the Gestaltungsbeirat to improve it, by accident. It was not planned with this lecture, that was planned already a month ago or 2 ago, that we started to say, guys, we only get, because not all the projects come to us, it's the permits where they are different opposed visions. Or important projects, they say, we don't know, is it A or B, or we have disagreements, so we will ask a second opinion from the Gestaltungsbeirat, and that's not a decisive one, this is a discussion. We open a debate, we improve, we find new arguments sometimes, and so on. I remember the first meeting here in the Gestaltungsbeirat, we go always at noon, we go with the bus to see the sites. In the afternoon, we meet. We go to a site, everything was, in the design was 4 levels. We go with the bus there, we see all neighborhood is 6 levels. I said, this is weird, why is it only 4 levels? Because then in the afternoon, the architect and the promoter, they present the project, and then there are questions, and we said, why is it only 4 levels? And we saw a big smile with the architect and the promoter, said, yeah, it was 6 levels 2 years ago, but the guys from Heritage and the administration forced us 2 times to cut a level. And then they got totally red and a bit ashamed, and they said, yeah, maybe we exaggerated, because indeed it is more harmonious with 6, and it became 6 levels. We got a second presentation half a year later. They improved also. We were very severe. There were a few mistakes in the project. They improved those. They were proud. The architect said, the promoter said, this is better. Part of the profit in height, we compensated it by building less in the garden and making more green and so on. So everybody said, now the project is really better. And we didn't attack the people who lowered it by accident 2 years ago. Their intentions were not bad. Maybe they were used to being afraid of the reaction of the public. So you have to walk on eggs. It's very difficult to be heavy to change a dossier and to walk on eggs, because if they break. So it's a theater. It's a balance act.
Ja, es ist vielleicht auch eine gute Antwort auf die Frage, die mir noch ein bisschen im Kopf herumgeht, wie man eigentlich sowohl im kleinen wie im großen Maßstab Menschen anstiftet, sich kooperativ zu verhalten. Und das scheint ja so letztendlich ein Spiel zu sein, das eben ja vielleicht auch jenseits dieser demokratischen, in Anführungsstrichen, Aushandlungsprozesse, die ja immer eigentlich interessengesteuerte Prozesse sind, glaube ich, ist das Spiel letztendlich einen wissensgesteuerten Prozess in Gang zu setzen und weniger eben eine Macht- oder Aushandelsprozess auf der Grundlage von Interessenlagen zu initiieren.
Ja, es ist nicht nur wissensgesteuert, es ist auch Emotion.
Ja, okay.
The human factor is very important.
Ja.
You have to know how to agree to disagree with people.
Ja.
And you have to come closer. The moment you know you will have a disagreement with somebody, you have to tighten the friendship or create a friendship first, a bond. Even with somebody that you know, it's a difficult bond. But if you don't have this, you can't even have a discussion. And I think you see this in social media. People start to throw it stones after 5 sentences. I see it sometimes in my own reactions in the social media, because the opponent in the discussion is not there. I lose my modest politeness. I lose my humor. I learn it now in the social media to be the same as I'm in conferences. Like, use humor, put a smiley. Say, yes, but I mean this in this way. Don't be offended, because, like you said, I don't want to offend you. And I understood your criticism immediately, because you said, I don't want to offend you. This is so important, this human factor.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich glaube, es sind noch viele Fragen,
die
wir weiter besprechen könnten. Leider ist das Zeitfenster jetzt hier beendet und Sie sind herzlich eingeladen, informell weiterzusprechen, aber für heute vielen Dank und ich fand den Abend sehr spannend. Vielen Dank nochmal und bleiben Sie uns gewogen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss.